Hi, we're some of Tom's West Coast friends. Most of us, well in fact all of us were in Beyond Control. I was in Beyond Control with Tom. Everybody else just knows him because of their experience with it. And we had a few things we'd like to say about Tom. I'm Steve Wyant.
Circus Zalewski.
Glad you're
Larry Karazuski.
Daniel Watterson.
and Chris Webb.
Well, Tom lived in my guest house for many years. In fact, I just found out he's not there anymore. Tom presents the conundrum, what if Lenny from A Mice Pen was the smartest man in the world? Tom, you can always go to Tom if you had a problem, if you lost your job, or if you broke up with your girlfriend, you could always go to Tom, and then Tom would tell you, did you notice that the Depeche Mode song, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, was not put on the home DVD version? Tom had his own little world, and sometimes it was great, it was always fun, interesting, and Tom just had his own way, and we were mostly happy to be in it from time to time.
It is one of those weird things. I think Reader's Digest used to have this thing that was like the most fascinating person you've ever met.
Most memorable
person you ever met. And that, for I think a lot of us here, is Tom Mantke.
I would agree, yeah.
It's one of those things where like he is such an individual. There is really nobody else like him on the planet. Now even he's not here. But and I think it says a lot where you were actually in Beyond Control with him and we were not. Yet we all became really good friends with him. I mean, I was like 14 years old when I joined the company, and I just heard the legend of Mantke. And so I had to meet this guy, and so finally when I did, he didn't disappoint. We became friends, even though he was 4 or 5 years older than me.
Well, he actually became friends with a new generation because after the advisor on Beyond Control passed away, a number of the former members took over writing the show. At one point I was asked to do it and was terrified of trying to do it by myself, so I asked Tom to come along and help me write the show. And so we did about 3 seasons together, writing Beyond Control. He, of course, doing all the really funny stuff. And he got to know a whole new generation of kids because of the time he came back to advise the show.
Yeah. But I only really know when I'm from South Bend, but I didn't know him in South Bend that well. It's only when he came out to visit Larry for 2 weeks in Los Angeles and stayed for 20 years that I started to become friends with him.
No, Tom came out to visit. I was living with Dan, I was living with my writing partner, Scott Alexander, and another guy named Eric Gardner, who became very, very close with Tom. And Tom was just coming out for like 2 weeks, and he was going to sleep in the little office area. And I think after like month 3, Eric Gardner came over to me and he's like, look, I like Tom, but like if he's going to stay here, he has to pay rent. So it's clear he's not visiting anymore. He's living in California, and so we actually made him pay rent, and he took over that room of the house.
He eventually moved to his own apartment, had a job for courier service.
Courier Express. We all know that because he managed to steal like the jackets for us, so we all were Courier Express jackets. He worked there for a very long time.
I sent my housekeeper to Tom's apartment once because I was out of town, and she still talks about it.
Like, she sent her to clean up Tom's place?
It was traumatizing.
I hope it's tender.
Yeah, wow. Warzone pay.
Then he had a screenplay that actually got purchased at one point, right?
Yeah, no, the Slushy. It's one of the funniest scripts that ever existed. It was a parody of Christmas cartoons. Yeah, like Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and all those things. It was about a snowman who comes to life and becomes an alcoholic. And he winds up working for basically sells out Christmas to work for an alcohol company. But it's brutally funny, and it was really great. It was sort of South Park before South Park. And it's one of those scripts that everyone in town read it and said this is the funniest thing ever. And it was before the rebirth of animation, kind of, and particularly animation for adults. If this would have been written in the era of, say, Adult Swim, I think Tom would have had whatever he wanted to make this thing. And we tried to get it made for a long, long time, but people kind of people in the town didn't understand the idea of animated, but there's all this subversive humor, and that subversive humor is all coming from Tom.
Tom had jokes about the movie Enemy Mine, so if you go that deep with the references, it's hard to keep up.
I mean, Tom was an amazing writer, amazingly quick. I mean, that was the thing that blew us away because, you know, whatever, for Dan or me writing a script, it could take a whole year for us to write a script. Tom could write a script in like 2 weeks. And it would be really funny, and it would just be, you know, it's such a shame that they didn't find more success out here.
Yeah, you know, I just have very simple things to say. Tom always made me laugh. It was always great to see him. He was always on top of his game for the most part, you know, I always look forward to seeing him. Just one of the smartest people I ever met, and always treated me really well.
And like you said, really quick, I hesitate to say this because there's a little profanity in it, but I hope you'll accommodate me. Tom and I were in Chicago once.
Oh,
we were
God.
walking,
Geez, what a terrible word.
hope not to offend you all. Tom and I were in Chicago once, and we were walking down the street, and a homeless man approached us, came up to Tom and said, "Hey, motherfucker, give me $1." And Tom looked at him without missing a beat and said, "First of all, your approach is all wrong." And that was Tom, you know, he was always quick to jump on a joke like that, and one of the funniest men I've ever known.
We had a friend who's maybe not so popular who decided, I'm moving out to LA. And Tom said, well, I guess there's nothing we can do legally. So we end up using Mankeisms all the time.
Yeah. And you guys had an interesting anecdote about how we looked at you once, right?
Well, for me, I
You
came
looked
into
at me
the
first.
Well, yeah, you did. Well, you're better looking. So,
A couple of years ahead.
I joined Beyond Our Control very late, my senior year, and barely got to know anybody. I didn't get to know these guys till much later. Well, Steve and I worked together a little bit, but I met Tom once at a party at Dan's place. But I knew of Tom because for years there was this legendary, unique individual that there were whispers about, and stories about, and everybody knew
Like Bigfoot.
or knew of him. And so some of the stories made him sound like an amazingly brilliant individual. Some of them made him sound like somebody who would eviscerate you if you said the wrong thing. When I met him,
Both were true, by the way.
Yes, exactly.
So you say. When I met him, I was struck by the fact that he was a very happy individual, surrounded by friends. This was my impression of him. Maybe it was just the party, I don't know.
Keep it light.
But he was, he was in his element, he was happy, he was surrounded by friends and smiling, and that's how I remember him personally.
I mean, he did when you got Tom in the right mood. I mean, he could be just so pleasant to be with and so smart and could talk about any subject matter.
Oh, any subject.
I mean, that was the amazing thing is that, you know, I sort of said this when he first passed away, that he was Google before we had Google, because literally he knew a little bit about just about everything. And anytime you just like, you know, you could talk to Tom about anything or what was Theodore Roosevelt's administration known for, and he would be able to tell you. It was a fascinating conversationalist when he was on a roll.
And in recent years, since he was living back in Michigan, we lived out here, I would get calls from him occasionally, and we'd talk about nothing, you know, season 2 of The Facts of Life, anything like that, you know, whatever fascinated him at that moment. And we'd have interesting conversations, and he seemed to know everything about everything that he wanted to talk about. And they were really interesting and usually funny discussions.
I do have one story in terms of like how, I think it was one of the moments where I realized this, what a brilliant mind he was when I was only 15 or 16 years old. These guys took me, Tom and Steve and a couple of people got a road trip from Indiana and Michigan to California. It was the first time I had been out to California. And we came out here, and Tom was, we were at some like memorabilia place, and Tom was obsessed with, it was a picture of Bugs Bunny. But it was like really expensive. It was like $75. None of us had $75 then, but he was going to buy it. And I just couldn't understand why he was doing that. And I said, Tom, why are you buying it? It was a cell. It was an animation cell. I said, why are you spending $75 to buy a picture of Bugs Bunny? He said, because it's not a picture of Bugs Bunny. This is Bugs Bunny. He made that meta jump to like this idea that this cell is actually the only existence that Bugs Bunny ever had. And when I was a little kid, I was like, wow, that just blew my mind.
Well, the fact of the matter is, because Tom and myself and Randy Reinhardt was the other guy in the car, we coaxed Larry to come out to L.A.
Gas money.
But when you think about it, if not for Tom and some of others, maybe Man in the Moon or People vs. Larry Flint might never have happened because we encouraged Larry to come out here for the first time.
We actually played tribute to Tom in the People vs. Larry Flint. I watched it last night, and one of the judges, his name Tom Mantke. They gave him a middle name of Alva, even though Tom's middle name is Helen, but it was Tom Mantke.
And speaking of that trip from South Bend to LA, at one point in the trip we were exhausted. All of us just wanted to sleep. We were trying to drive all the way through. So at one point Tom just took the wheel. I don't know how long it was, maybe 12 hours or something. He got us all the way to Vegas on that drive. And when we got to Vegas, we went out and did things. Tom slept in the hotel room the entire time because he was exhausted.
And he does have a musical writing credit on the film I did, Ford Fairlane, where he co-wrote the very famous song "Booty Time" from that movie.
Sung by
Ed O'Neill.
Ed O'Neill.
You may Google it. I mean, I do think that ultimately Tom, and we talk about the legend and mystery of Tom, he's ultimately unknowable because he did create his own mystery, and that we all remember seeing him at a lot of different parties, but we always remember turning around and he's gone.
Right.
Like Tom would come up to me and whisper, he had a favorite line like, "Okay, you cut the power."
Right.
Like he wanted a black hut that he could slip out in the middle of. And he created his own legend. He made out with Maria Bello. He was married to a 6'9" Scientologist. Who's to say which of these legends are true? But I mean, it always kept Tom interested.
Here's the thing about Tom. I mean, I guess nowadays they call it, the term is ride or die. Like your pal that you can always depend on no matter what. You know, he was some of us would be like he was our AC Cowlings. You know, he'd be the guy who took care of us. But when we were all living together, we would go to movies at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, literally there was a 1 a.m. showing of a movie, the Short Circuit 2.
Not even Short Circuit 1.
Short Circuit.
Johnny Five's still alive.
Yes. And so we all went to it, but we knew it was going to be terrible. But like 10 minutes in, Tom just went. We were the only people in the theater. We're the only people in the theater, and Tom just had enough. And I remember him just like going to the back row and just lifting up all the seats and laying down on the floor with all the popcorn and all the things from the entire day's show, and just took a nap. Just decided he was done with it, and we just had to wake him up when it was over.
Oh, I have one last anecdote for you. I was working at a publishing company, basically a phone room back in Indiana, making hot calls, trying to get people to buy ads. And I got Tom a job there, and he wasn't doing very well. It's a hard job trying to get people to buy ads over the phone. And the higher-ups told me that, Mantke needs to really get his sales up. We're going to have to let him go. So when he came in that day, I said, Tom, we really need to get some sales in today if you can do that, because things are looking a little on the edge as far as staying employed. And so a few minutes after that, he went into the bathroom. He came out of the bathroom and he came up to me and said, "Look, I just quit, okay?" And so I saw him later and I said, "Why'd you just quit in the middle of the day, and then why'd you just finish out the day?" And he said, "Well, when I was in the bathroom, I was thinking about it, and I thought, if I leave now, I get home in time for Hogan's Heroes." And that was Tom.
That is Tom. That is Tom. All right, we love you, brother.
We do. You're in our thoughts. You'll be with us always.
Say hello to John Hughes.
Yes.
Pretty in Pink, one of his favorite movies.
I think the favorite movie. There's nothing even close to Pretty in Pink. He saw that movie so many times the first year out here in Los Angeles.
Well, we hope you're in a better place, buddy. We love you.
All right. Bye-bye.